Good night,
Hi.
everyone. You here?
Hey.
Good night, everyone. Okay, so we already have some people here. If you guys are looking, just say hi. I already see Jamila. Excited for the chat. Love to have you guys here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good night, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the Growth Project podcast. As you guys know, I am Sherise and I am forever your host. So, for those of you who are just joining me for the first time, who may not know about the Growth Project, who may not know about me, my name is Sherise, and a little bit about the Growth Project. The Growth Project podcast or the live show is really about sharing. It's a place of where I want people to come to be able to receive guidance on the things that they may not naturally know where to go get it, the things that may be a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more taboo on some ends. And I really started the Growth Project podcast as this place where you can come to get your perspective shifted, open your perspective, learn more, truly mastered this game called life. So this is part of my Success with the Stars series, where I bring on different astrologers. And today I have one of my favorite astrologers again, to just give us some different insights, help us open our perspectives, and see the different links that we may have with certain planets. And seeing its effect in our life. So, welcome to the Success with the Stars series, and welcome to the Growth Project podcast. Hopefully, you guys stay here, you become part of the soul family as we all continue to ascend and grow during this time. So I know a lot of us are, finding ourselves during this time, redefining ourselves, becoming aware of ourselves in such deep ways, in ways that we've never ever experienced before. And truly, that is the purpose behind the Growth Project, is to have a place where we can have those real, raw discussions that we currently need at this time. So join me today in welcoming one of my favorite astrologers, Nicole from Outer Inner Space. I absolutely love Nicole. I stumbled upon her work. Like, as you guys know, I've just been, in the astrology rabbit hole for years now, and I don't think I'm ever getting out. And I stumbled upon Nicole's work, and she put me on to ESP. And ESP was something that I've never really known the words for, but I feel like I intuitively understood what it was. But I've never had words for it. And then just stumbling upon your work and finally feeling like a breath of fresh air, just feeling like relieved, like, okay, there's words for this. I'm not crazy. Like there is verbiage and words around, our six senses and the things that we ourselves know to be true, or know that we're able to do, but we never really had any knowledge around it before now. So that just really, just made me go so deep into your work, and just like read all your articles, listened to like all of your videos, just like understanding more about like what is extrasensory perception, and all of the things that come with being a highly sensitive person. So join me, everyone. I know I'm already talking a lot, but join me in welcoming Nicole from Outer Inner Space. And I'm just so, so, so happy to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Sherise. I'm so happy to be here, and I really appreciate you saying that, because sometimes it does feel like I'm talking into the void when I talk about this kind of stuff. So even just hearing that you picked up on it means a lot. I'm glad it landed for you.
I feel like when we all start this, we're just like, oh, we're talking into the void. But I find it comforting sometimes just knowing that like whoever needs to like find the information will find it. And I feel like
Yeah.
with me, just us being on like different ends of the world, you're joining us from Australia, and me finding your information so valuable, it just shows the interconnectedness of everything, but also just like who it's for, they're gonna get it. And I think that that's something that we all need to learn to trust, especially when we are sharing our message and our research and our life purpose.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely agree.
so let's start a little bit with you, Nicole. Just tell us, like, how did outer inner space come to be? Like, what was the birth process of that? Why did you start? Why did you start it? Because, like, I love all your graphics. I love your videos. I love your scrolls, your digital library. Like, I think it's so unique and like yeah, I don't really see anything else like that out there and your perspective is very it's so insightful and it's very unique. So just how did that even come to be? How did your baby outer inner space come to be?
Well, I guess for me, it was sort of like in order to communicate what I learned, it was just like an outlet for that. So for me, taking notes and sort of putting things down on paper is a really powerful way for me to integrate information. And I wanted to sort of convey um, and sometimes I would like note and not really be conscious of it, like automatic writing and that kind of thing. And so I wanted to, and I was learning so much about astrology and just going into all these different tangents and not just astrology, but metaphysics and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to sort of, yeah, kind of put all that together in a way that was like easy to intake, not too like dense, even though I realize some of my stuff can be deep, deep. But yeah, it was sort of just a learning process for me that I was just sharing at the same time. So what I learn, I'd create something from it. And then I just get kind of inspired to delve into certain topics like the chart ruler series and the ESP series kind of thing. Just it was just like yeah, a way of communicating things that I was learning really.
I love that. I love that. I feel like you definitely do channel your information potently and it makes sense. I feel like it's like whenever we're writing and we're channeling what's so true for us and what's so present in the moment, it comes out very strongly and potently, I feel. Then when we're like sometimes like I'm a perfectionist, so sometimes I can try to leave things for in the future, then I feel the energy is not as it's like it's not as potent. It's like I'm not going through it anymore. It's different, you know. I've learned. um, I love that. What is your favorite thing? What is your favorite medium of expression you would say through outer inner space? Is it the videos, the articles? I really do love your articles too, or even just doing readings and everything.
Yeah, I think well, like putting myself on audio, like I never go on video, as you probably have seen. This is the first time I've shown my face actually on my channel. Um, or anywhere regarding outer inner space. So certainly not like the visual format, but I'm happy to be here. I think doing like the written notes and writing, I would say, is probably the predominant thing because it gives me time to sort of go over. It gives you time basically. It gives you time to reassess and edit and make sure that you're not sort of, well, I'm not sort of saying the same thing again and again, or yeah. So but a lot of my articles stem from those notes, from just like being in sort of a quiet space and receiving mode. Um, and yeah, so I'll just note a bunch of stuff and then it'll just like spawn like I have notebooks and notebooks of just like sketches. And so that's kind of informed a lot of my work, little drawings of stick figures and all that kind of stuff.
Mm, I love
So
that.
yeah, I'd say the written word essentially is probably the most predominant way of communicating for me.
I love both your videos and your articles, and I highly recommend everyone listening to definitely go to outer inner dot space,
Yeah.
um, to find Nicole's work because just reading it and like the graphics and the visuals and like it's very stimulating and it's super easy to understand. Like I just love the way that you take something that is harder to communicate and you're able to communicate it. So I love that. So let's get into the topic today. So today, Nicole is here to talk to us a little bit about Saturn, our frequency, and money. One of the reason why I wanted you to come on and talk about that was because from your video, a lot of people see Saturn as this enemy, as this really bad guy. And I love coming up on astrologers who have a different perspective than that, than who challenge us to see the bright side of Saturn, who challenge us to see why, you know, it has the restrictions or the energies that it has on us. And you're one of those people that I came across that speaks in this way. So I truly wanted to talk to you about that, and also just talk a little bit more about our authentic frequency, because that's something that you talk about a lot, where and this is part of what Saturn lesson is for us, and we're going to get into it. But you talk a lot about ESP, our authentic frequency, being really like regulating ourselves so that we can hold the abundance that is truly there for us. So this is all the type of like topics that we're going to get into today with Nicole, and I'm so happy to have you here and like to pick your brain on this. So Saturn and money, let's already just get into it. One of your videos, you talked about the correlation between Saturn and money, and I freaking love that. I was just like, oh, it makes so much sense. So you're like, we're in our realm. Time is super important. Saturn is time, and as we all know, time is money in our realm. So there is a direct link between Saturn and money. And this is something that I've never really heard a lot of different astrologers say. When we think about money, we think usually Venus. We think maybe even Jupiter when it comes to certain types of abundance. But do we really think Saturn when it comes to money? So that is what I wanted us to talk a little bit more about that. So in your words, how did you come about, like, tell me more about this observation that you made between Saturn and our money and our financial situation?
So, I feel like I have a lot of Saturn energy. I'm a Cap ascendant. I've got 12th house stellium in Capricorn and Scorpio stellium in my 10th house. So I'm Saturn heavy. And so it's been like a process. Like it's just sort of like a result of viewing patterns over time, essentially, for me. And that is one of like the key things about Saturn is like time and like the way that certain patterns loop and lessons kind of come up again and again. And so when I think of Saturn, I think of time, personal responsibility, and integrity and energy spends, essentially. So Saturn within integrity is like integrating mind, body, and spirit. So it's like talking your talk and walking your walk and making that aligned. And with that, over time, you see results, and Saturn rewards, you know, it's like it rewards consistent effort. And so with money, the way I kind of see it, and Saturn is like energy spends. So how do you spend your energy? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you invest in those little moments of your day? Where are you putting your energy? And then those little investments pay off over time when you're kind of working to integrate your lessons and working to resolve, you know, karma that you've created for yourself by your choices and by your actions, whether they be good ones or bad ones. They kind of loop back around for you to sort of refine your processes and create, a more aligned path towards what it is you like or what it is you want, what you see for yourself, what your future vision is of like how life could be, and the highest esteem of that. Saturn is guiding you down that road, and that's why sometimes we get roadblock after roadblock if we're not kind of spending our energy in a way that is aligned and is, right doing in a sense.
Mm-hmm. I love that you talk about energy as a currency, which is actually today's topic. I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't mention it in the beginning. Energy as currency is the topic for today, the link between Saturn frequency and finances. But I love that you talk about energy as currency, because from what I'm hearing you saying is that Saturn rewards us for energy well spent.
Mm-hmm.
Energy spent uh, creating, like you said, the aligned path or walking the aligned path and putting in the work. And it rewards that longevity, that the sustained action that we take over time. So energy well spent. And I think that's something that we don't discuss as much in our society, because we talk about how well we may spend our money, or even certain things like that, but we never really talk about our energy um, as this sort of currency that we need to spend. And I highly resonate with that, because this is my Saturn return, and a lot of the lessons that I'm learning is about how I'm spending my energy. Am I putting my energy towards the right things? Am I putting my energy to the things that are benefiting me? Am I putting my energy to things that may have a higher return on investment later on? Like, am I putting my energy behind those things, or am I putting my energy to where everyone's directing me, or am I putting my energy just consuming information and consuming content and watching a whole bunch of Netflix and not doing anything with it? And this observation that you've made has helped to me, because I'm like, okay, if I continue spending my energy wisely and well and doing the things, even though they're hard right now, I know that I'm going to be rewarded um, throughout time. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Something that you said too, I remember when we were talking earlier, you said Saturn wants our alignment more than constant productivity. So when we had one of our meetings, this is something that you said. You look surprised. You're like, did I see that? That's a
That's what I mean. It's like,
yeah.
what?
Yes, you did. I wrote it down I have like a little sticky note, and you said Saturn like believes that alignment is better than constant productivity. So talk to
Mm,
me about that, because the way that our current society is set up, if you're not constantly overworking yourself, if you're not constantly like burning out, like the whole no sleep vibe, we're always grinding. Yet this is what we believe we need to do to have success. So how does your theory and your observation play into that?
yeah. That was a hard lesson for me actually, because it really is hard to um, separate that action from a feeling of success. Like, if you're not moving in the direction of your goals or whatever, or even, just generally how you play out your day, if you're not doing anything, well, it's considered a write off in some ways, or, like that it was unproductive.
Mhm.
Um, so and that's very true of what you said, is like it's a social imprint, really. It's like grind culture, and like how people that we see as successful having that kind of lifestyle, um maybe they have a certain energetic makeup that aligns with them, but lots of people don't, like especially sensitive people.
Mm,
um that leads to burnout and feeling, I mean, like depression, anxiety, all these kinds of things if you can't maintain that level of productivity day to day. But the thing about, Saturn and our authentic frequency is like we're all running on a really specific timeline. And I noticed Jamila said something about being a late bloomer. So wanting to be in a good relationship with Saturn is like Saturn, like everybody is on a totally different timeline. So that comparison bit about like being somewhere at a certain age, or like anything like that, where you are in your friendship group compared to someone else, is like they're running on a different wavelength to you. Like they could be here and you're just like here working slow. And for me, like I'm nearly 34, and like no marriage, no partner, no kids, nothing like that, but like understanding that my time is coming, that kind of thing. So,
mm,
and the same with like professional success, like just I would just love anyone listening to this just to realize, like, you have a path, you have a process, and the more you kind of tune into your own energy and sort of give yourself some grace in that regard, and just allow for like your own workflow to kind of come to the fore, and for your own processes to emerge, that they'll be quite different to other people or those that you totally admire, even. Um, but if you allow yourself that little bit of grace and that sense of like discovering your own timing, I think that can really open up heaps of just perspective for you, so that you're not kind of like, why aren't I there yet? Or I should be there by now, kind of thing. That kind of thinking is just not productive. um, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That type of thinking is definitely not productive at all. It's actually counterproductive. And I love what you say about us being all on our different time, because, and relating that to Saturn, because again, like I said, Saturn can have such a bad rap. And I love that you say that Saturn is literally here to teach us that we all have our own timing, and
Mm-hmm.
divine timing is true. And we need to not compare ourselves to other people and their timeline. And even through your ESP series and your chart ruler series that I like totally devour, you talk a lot about how every different sign has their own like wavelength. Like, so Aries might be like Taurus might be a
Mm-hmm.
little bit steadier, like mutables might be more frantic, and they might need to ground themselves to like even out. And you go into all of these different ways to view our frequency, so that we're not constantly like comparing ourselves to other signs and other people and how their energy expresses. And I think that's so important when we're in astrology, because a lot of times I see people talking like, I have a bad placement, or like, I don't like this type of energy. And what I think is really beautiful about what you're doing is really showing us the beauty, like within every energy.
Yeah, and how important, like one of the most amazing things about astrology for me is like taking in the bigger picture. So like, like even if there are certain harsh placements, there's ways to counteract that and work with other placements that um, offset certain energies. And simple things like, I talk a lot in my work and my videos about synthesizing the axis. So like, working along the spectrum of opposing energies, because like oppositions is one axis, it's one energy, but it's just a different expression of those energies. So yeah, totally think that like um, like realizing the multi-dimensional nature of our beings, like not just being so focused on particular details as such, but like you like astrology is wonderful because it gives us a lens to view different aspects of ourselves, and then kind of layering that, you kind of see that you have so many like facets and so much nuance. And like in that sense, you really can't compare yourself with anybody else, because they've got a whole different like combo of frequencies that they're working with, and you have absolutely no idea what a person is working with, really. Like that's and then like not just astrology, but taking into account their social conditioning, their environment, their upbringing, all that kind of stuff. um, it really does like bring in a beauty of differentiation between individuals, but a sense of like unity, because we're all in that space and we're all kind of like able to find those on the same frequencies. And there'll be off days and there'll be on days, and it just creates a sense of grace again, I find.
Yeah. I like that. I know what you mean about the grace aspect of just understanding when things are your time, and understanding when, yeah, and like allowing yourself to go at your own pace. I do a lot of coaching for my clients who want to be online, or who want to be known or want to put their work out there and like develop the courage to and everything like that. By the way, I never knew you never did video, so thank you for even like I never thought to ask. I was just like, hey, you want to do a video with me? And you're like, yeah. I never thought.
I like you, Sherise. It was easy, yes.
But thank you for coming on here. But a lot of the time too is helping them understand that like they don't have to work on someone else's timeline and someone else's strategy, and someone is saying you need to do this and you need to post 3 times a day and you need to do this, and I'm like, okay, but does that even feel good to you? And if it doesn't feel
Yeah.
good to you, why are we adopting other people's beliefs and their frequencies and their timelines when we have yet to fully understand ourselves and what feels right for us? So before we even continue talking about money more, talk to me about ESP, and if you can explain to the people what is ESP and what is extrasensory perception.
Okay. So this is it's a complex topic, really, isn't it? Because there's not a lot of information on it. It's so subjective. If you talk about it to the wrong people, they'll side like eye you and step away. But um, it's something that I've found astrology has been really useful in like helping me grasp just like what I was talking before about like the nuances of frequency and the individual nature of each person. Like everybody, in my opinion, has extrasensory perceptions. Um, and the way that it's sort of like a way of reading energy, essentially, extrasensory perception. So like how you intake data, there's going to be um, you might sort of the way you receive energy, basically. So for sensitive people, you could walk into a room and be taking in like so much more emotion, feeling states, um, all this kind of thing. Whereas like someone who's a little less sensitive or, would walk into the room and just like see someone smiling or, maybe take in like 10 bits of data versus someone who's highly psychic who might take in like 1,000 pieces of data and be overwhelmed because they're in like this pool of energy. So I felt like it was important to talk about because for some people they can think that like they are not functioning correctly or that there's something wrong with them because certain environments or dynamics can overwhelm them, when really like when you sort of start to get a sense of how ESP, how it works for you personally, you can start to like use techniques and such to navigate that energy and protect yourself in a sense, but also just like understand that you are contending with more often than like an average person, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a wonderful navigation skill, but unfortunately there's not a lot of information about it. um, and it's not normalized, and you, like I said, you can't talk about it, and if you do, then people kind of put a crazy tag on you. um, but yeah, like it could be anything from sensing people's emotion or picking up on thought, or a combination of like the ways of just like receiving, like you could walk into a room and receive like a whole packet of information, not knowing how, but then you've just got like this whole extra level of data that's kind of like affecting your being. And um, yeah, it's different for everyone, but it's also like not just specific people, I don't believe, have it. Like some people are sensitive to it and understand it in and of themselves, but some people like have a lot of mental, like, linear thinking that would be like, "Oh, that's not real," but, um, it just depends on the person.
I should have totally asked you to prepare some examples, but just off of your head, are you able to give us some examples? I know like you have a Scorpio stellium, so some examples of how ESP can show up for someone with a lot of Scorpio energy or like Aries energy or Taurus.
Yeah, Scorpio energy, I would say, would be able to sense like deeper motivations of people. Definitely be able to sense if a person's like bullshitting. It's just natural Scorpio energy, really. Like, but that's still ESP. That's picking up on what is not like right there in front of you. Um, that's an extrasensory perception. I put heaps of examples in my ESP series, and there's one for like every sign. But I would suggest watching the whole thing because, like I said before, like it's the whole chart that you're kind of working with. So some things are going to be more predominant, and some things still exist, but you might not have even tuned into it because, like with extrasensory perception, in my view, is like it's such a natural process that you don't know what's happening. So
Mm,
yeah, like what you're picking up, you might just think that everyone's taking that information in when really not the case. And the
mm,
problem with it too, well, not the problem with it, but the tricky thing about it is like the validation thing is, so like you could go into a room, like you and I could go into a room and we like, are sensitive to energies and all that kind of thing, but the way what you pick up and what I pick up will be very different. And then I might say something to you and you'd be like, oh, I didn't really sense that, but because of that difference in our energy is like, yeah, it's just like a natural thing that and often we overlook what we receive too, and
mm,
that is when we don't trust our intuition and our gut feelings, and um, override with our logical mind these these knowings deep within that we um, know to be true. But like if we kind of seek validation, like, oh, talk about it to a friend and they try to like be like, oh no, that's not how it went, it's like some of those things like can be helpful in a way of like keeping you sane, but also sometimes it can be detrimental to that trust that you have with like what you perceive and what you sense. And
mm,
that's a process to rebuild that trust, and just to like rebuild or start the relationship with trusting those senses, because they are very subtle and they're not loud. They can be, like if you're in certain situations sometimes they can be loud, but yeah, it's like it's a shame that that just doesn't get talked about more. And I feel like it's the cause of a lot of anxiety and that kind of stuff, because some people are just dealing with so much more data
mhm,
than than others.
mhm.
But yeah, I would say like check out the ESP series because I do heaps of examples for like every sign, and you can apply the sign to your house too. So
Mhm. I've looked at all of them because like you said, we are our full chart. So I've looked at each of them, especially for all of my different places. So like Leo and everything to just really see the how I may be sensing in that area. But I do agree that the examples that you give are really, really good because the Scorpio one and the Sagittarius one, which is my sun and my moon, really, really confirmed so much to me. Like you said, these are gifts or these are senses that we have that we don't really talk about, and you may question yourself, like, do I really know what I know? But you
mm,
do, and and like you said, sometimes we seek other people's opinion, validation. Like they didn't really say that, or they didn't really mean it like that. But we know what we picked up on, and learning to truly just value that is so important because even in your Scorpio video, you were talking about just like Scorpio's ability, like you say, to see truly what's behind, what's underneath, the deeper motivations. And then just me constantly telling myself, yeah, but they didn't say that. But it's like, I know. And then it comes
yeah.
to pass that I was probably right. And then it's like you should have trusted yourself. And but it's like
Mm,
you said, no one teaches us about this. So it's like, how do we even know that like these senses exist, and how do we even know how to use them and hone them? I feel like we
mhm.
need, like a school for like superpowers, or like extra sensory perception and learning how to
Yeah.
hone things so you can be able to tell, okay, when am I a little crazy and when am I actually really tapped into
Mhm.
to yeah, to that. So
Yeah.
thank you for thank you for taking the time to explain this as much as possible because I know that it's not something that's super easy to explain,
Mm.
especially when we're talking about subtle senses. It's like, we don't see them, we don't touch them for a reason. Like, it's very subtle and it's energetic. And
Mm.
translating energy into words takes intelligence. So thank you for doing that for us today. So, something that you said that I really, really highly agree with, I love, and it's going to take us into our conversation today about Saturn and more money. In one of your videos, I took a quote. You say, "From basically the moment we're born, we're tweaked in order to create ourselves based on the feedback of others." So, yeah, from basically the moment we're born, we're tweaked in order to create ourselves based on the feedback of others. But turning that around and seeing it from the inner perspective is also required in order to get rid of that conditioning and see past those limitations and those fears that are not even yours in the first place.
Mm.
You go on to talk about how the conditioning that we receive and us modeling ourselves and tweaking ourselves based on the feedback of others messes with our true authentic frequency. And that throughout life gives us lessons and things come up for us to really clear them so we can tune into that frequency more. So, talk to me more about that. Like, why is it important for you? Like, why do you feel it's important for us to tune into that frequency and to get rid of this conditioning and even the astrology behind that as well?
Hmm. So there's a really interesting man called Dr. Gabor Mate, and he talks about. Sorry, just adjusting. He talks about this authenticity versus attachment. So when we're born, in order to survive in the world, we need to have an attachment to our caregivers in order to survive. We need them in order to survive. And that comes at a cost at times because sometimes, our parents or our caregivers get overwhelmed and they say, be quiet, or, like, I need you to do this now. And then, your natural expression gets shunned, it gets shut down. And over time, that compounds. So,
Mhm.
the problem is, though, that when we grow up, because this is a learned pattern of survival, is that we keep doing that. We keep like molding ourselves in a certain way so that we get that approval, so we get that sense of belonging in the world. Um, and we we shut down our authentic expression, or we can't because we're taught that that isn't allowed. Um, so unless you kind of were brought up in an environment where, something like that never happened. It could have happened once, and that would be enough of an imprint that, like, it could cause some kind of an effect. So, and in this time, we also are absorbent. We're so absorbent in our early development, to the influence of our environment, to the beliefs that surround us, to these little sayings that get conveyed to us about, like, we can't afford this, or money doesn't grow on trees. All these kinds of little things get absorbed into the body. And because when we don't really know, even now, how to allow energy to flow, we have all these stored, imprints and beliefs, in our body and in our field that we keep enacting.
Mhm.
So even if we consciously are working on overcoming beliefs, even if they are something we're aware of, um, if we're not kind of working with, like, releasing these beliefs in this stored wave, which is what I believe, like, when we're receiving input from others, is like a wave coming towards us, and we're made of atoms, we're a wave in a sense. If we're not like realizing that we can actually work with that flow and releasing what doesn't belong to us, and releasing um, ideas that aren't coherent with what is truly our own core belief, um, then we enact it. We find these reflections in our outer world of how that's still playing out in our field. And so Yeah, it's that process of deconditioning of these old ideas and of everything that we've absorbed from our parents, from our families, from our friends, from society, from the messages that we intake all the time. Um, that can congest our flow. It can congest our expression. And so, yes, it's about sort of like real like learning that you can actually work with that energy. You can intend to release that energy and you can like create space. Create space in your field, in your aura, to sort of release those things that have been absorbed, so that more of what is true for you can come to the fore. And then you can develop, like, from your experience over time, like, do new dialogue of what is actually true for you.
So, what do you, in your opinion, what actually blocks or what disrupts our authentic frequency or our authentic field? So, it's a negative feedback from others. What else?
Well, I think it's that sense of wanting to belong as well, of that sense of wanting to be seen in a certain way. Um, like, social imprinting is like a real real thing, just the way that um, like, this idea of how certain professions or certain people or like personality types are seen in the world. Like, if you're outgoing and happy, then like more valuable than someone who is like quiet and not seen, kind of thing. um, I mean, there are so many things that can influence us, even things that, you know it's like these trigger points that often get created when we're very young and so sensitive and so vulnerable, that, like, like, someone can leave a negative comment, kind of thing, and that triggers that really delicate part of ourselves, of our soul, that was hurt that one time. um, yeah, it can happen in a plethora of different ways. um, and until we kind of, like, yeah, consciously um, recognize, like, wait, that was like an incoming wave that um, I know doesn't, like, resonate with me. I'm just going to let that kind of flow through, or consciously, like, work through. And it doesn't really have to be so mental as such, as like sensation based, I find. um, to say that, like, if you are triggered in a certain way with a certain belief, we'll talk about a money block or whatever,
Mhm.
you could mentally write it out, do whatever you want to do to bring it to your conscious awareness. Um, you might need to have discussions with people, talk to a coach, and bring those blocks to the awareness with right questioning, that kind of thing. Um, but essentially, like, you can work with those blocks within the body, sensing, like, where is it that you're holding that? Is it like a sense of anxiety in the chest? And
Mhm.
then like, creating space, like doing muscle relaxation um in those areas of the body to allow that energy to flow. And it may not be an instantaneous result that you get from doing that body work, but it's the intention that you are, like, allowing that stored wave to release out of the body, out of the field. Um, Over time, you kind of get a sense that the energy is moving a little bit more, and that trigger point doesn't have so much um, of a reactive effect, or you just have a different point of view on a certain thing after a little while, because you're not like yeah, you've just allowed space where that initial imprint has been sort of stored this whole time.
Mm. So, how do we get back? So, let's delve a little bit into. I feel like you've already kind of touched on it. Like, you've touched on the body, you've touched a little bit on the subconscious mind. So, how do we get back to our authentic field? Because you, from what I've read and listened to in your work, you believe that like our authentic field is also directly connected to our path, our most aligned path, our abundance, basically how we even want to spend our energy, uh, how we want to spend our energy energetically, wisely. Delving a little bit more into that, how does one return to their authentic wave field after trauma, after just everyone sending their wave fields and like messing up our frequency? How do we now return back to our authentic frequency?
Mhm. Well, I would say first, well, not first, but first thing I think of here is developing a relationship with the body and the way that it's communicating with you. So that's a really important thing, just in terms of like where you're positioning yourself in the world, in the sense of like, are you going into environments that are chaotic and destructive to your mental health?
Mm,
That is going to hold you back from being able to sense what is, what is good for you. So, like, your body is always communicating with you in that way. So, developing that relationship with like determining where your senses are aroused in negative ways, in a sense, or in like non-conducive to good energy kind of ways. Um, that relationship is kind of the cornerstone, really, because you exist in your body. So that relationship, the more you develop that sense of identifying where it is your energy is well received, where it's not well received, the kind of feedback that you're getting from certain environments, that will really help just develop that sense of calm within the body, that you need to be able to hear your intuition, that you need to be able to have the visions of the future, to be able to identify your goals, and or even just like or even just like what's true for you,
mm,
because we are habitual creatures, right? So um, we can put ourselves in certain situations because we think that it is the right thing to do, but like, if your body is screaming at you when you do that, then there's data there for you, um
or
and
even
again,
like even when we're burnt out and we think like this is like what we need to do to,
yeah.
and it's like our body's showing us completely something different. We're sick all the time, we're tired all the time, but yet we feel like this is what I have to do to like make it right.
And I think like the Saturn in Pisces at the moment is showing like there's value in rest. There's value in like creating that space for imagination. There's value in really putting stock in those faculties, those Piscean realms of dreams. Like, what are your dreams sort of telling you? Like, so that's kind of where like ESP comes into it, where like don't discount those impressions that you get. Don't discount when you're like tuned out in a conversation and your mind has gone somewhere like that. You're visiting a Piscean realm there. You're visiting like a different dimension, and
Mhm.
so it's about sort of taking that seriously and like not overruling it, like you said before about like trusting your gut on these certain things. Is like develop that relationship to these parts of you that are communicating with you, but they're not logical. They're easy to overrule.
Mhm.
um yeah, it is data for you, it's for your benefit, it's your navigation. So um by developing that relationship, I just think, and it's a slow build because oftentimes we're just so programmed to think linearly, think logically,
Mhm.
but um, you will notice over time that when that's your intention, is to develop that connection, and yeah, you open and you sort of start to see more, and you know where to go, and you know when to move, you know when to rest, you know when to flow, and you work with your energy. So when you've got the energy, you can be so much more productive and do like a bunch of work in a short amount of time that
Mhm.
would normally like strain you if you were kind of working against that flow. And like with Saturn, you've got time for everything. Like there's time for it all, but it's like your timing, like working with your own timing.
I feel like, so there's two things, I feel probably more, but there's two distinct things of your work that has really helped me. So period, brainwaves, and astrology has definitely helped me because learning to work with my own cycle and like linking that up with the moon and the phases of our cycle definitely helped me. You dropped some gems in there. I don't want to give too much, but um one thing that you say that I hope is okay that I say it is doing something like when we're ovulating. So, for example, like doing something that's related towards our goals or whatever it is that we're calling in or that we're manifesting or that we're birthing. Doing it when we're ovulating and then doing it at, like picking it up kind of like the next time we're ovulating, or like the cycles, like keeping it going. It's sometimes like all we need for something to come into fruition. And um, I feel like, especially as women, we tend to try to want to adopt this very masculine way of doing things with like this 24-hour cycle. But what's crazy is that we don't need the 24-hour cycle because we have super potent times in the month where like everything that is like when the waves are going out, if we just ride those waves, everything that we need to be done and to get done during that time will go out. And then when the waves are kind of coming in, we really need to allow ourselves to kind of just like go within now and like rest and to like do the different phases and trust that what we put out when the waves are going out is coming back to us when the waves are like or on the next cycle. And I've worked with that and I can attest to that. I feel the like the best and the most magnetic when oh, are you guys hearing my feedback?
Just a little bit then.
I started hearing it. But I just feel the best and the most magnetic. I feel like I get a lot of my goals done when I'm ovulating. And I just think about it like full moon to full moon, like full moon to full moon, ovulation to ovulation. And that has helped me a lot. And I know that you, part of your work, you've mentioned before about ESP was just, we're so logical to the point where even us as women have trouble trusting our intuition, and that was a huge part of just delving into ESP for you and teaching it is because especially as women we need to first like we truly need to value um, these senses, these extra senses of perception and our intuition and our imagination. um, so that was one of them. And then the second thing that's really helped me, because I got my reading from you, I got my second to eighth house um, evaluation reading from you, and I still go back to it till this day. And something that you really helped me with was like, yes, you have this Jupiter quality, you have the Piscean and the Sagittarius energy as a Sagittarius sun, and you're like you're gonna work a lot in the imaginary realms. So when you're at your desk and you're supposed to be working and like you're daydreaming of like your whatever it is and like you're in your imagination, that is also work. So that perspective really helped me because the more that before I used to beat myself up about being in my imagination and everything like that because I found that not productive, quote unquote. But how crazy it is that now that I let myself be in my imagination and imagine all of these things and have these grand adventures in my mind, how is it crazy now that more of these things are coming to pass, right? And that it's like truly like I did the work in my imagination. Like I did the work, I did the building in my imagination, and I was just able to just do the work in the physical realm to just let it come through. But the fact that I employed my imagination, that's something that definitely helped me gain perspective on because I always knew that I had really strong imaginative capabilities. But I've always been told ever since I was a little girl, like,
Mm,
you're spaced out, like, focus more. Stop being like, in another world. And it's like, no, like sometimes our energies work in that way. And that's sometimes just part of our gifts. So you definitely
I
help me
love
with
that.
that. As you're bringing up the imagination component, I just wanted to validate that with my own experience.
It's so true. Everything begins in the imagination. That's where our ideas come from. That's where we like you can do so much work just refining things without having to do the legwork and like going through edits and edits and edits. Believe me, I've done the process. But by like just activating that and really validating that, it is a legitimate faculty. It's part of our human experience. Same with dreams. Um, like that it is so again like easy to overrule because it's not physical, but
Mm.
like you said, like as women, like we have these really potent gifts of knowing, of seeing, of being able to determine things that can't be explained, but just trusting that. And I'm so glad to hear that you are and how it is actually working for you. um because it's part of your like you said, you always used to do that as a kid, so tuning back into, like, what was natural for you when you were young, what you miss about that, like, that bringing that back into the fore, um, it will activate so much potential growth, and because it's part of you, it's there for you, it's yeah, it's your essence.
And I think that's what really that's why I felt so drawn to your work with ESP, is because it's all about just going back to what felt natural, to our essence.
Mhm,
Just from the moment that we kind of like entered this realm. What is our essence? What feels really natural and good, in that. And sometimes I feel like a lot of people get scared when we talk about what's natural and what feels good and what feels right, because they can try. I get it. It can be mixed up with like our comfort zone. But we know that our comfort zone doesn't really feel that great, especially when, we're trying to achieve all of these great things, or we want to do so much more, but then we've been held back and we're procrastinating, and that doesn't really feel good. It's just comfortable. But when you're
mhm,
tapped into your essence and you're being truly authentic, that is it's a different feeling. So whenever I kind of sometimes get this type of pushback when I'm talking to people about their being natural and authentic, it can seem as it's like, well, maybe I don't want to be this version of me because it's like maybe natural me. It's like I don't know. It's like they feel like they need whatever performance they're doing, or they need whatever that,
mhm,
like, they don't want to just allow themselves to be natural or
mhm,
authentic. Um, and I don't even know why we're at this point where we think being natural is somewhat bad. But as you're talking, it's just making me think about the fact that we truly need to understand, like, what is our authentic frequency and why it's important. Um,
mhm,
because there is an aspect of our society that wants conformity. I mean,
mm,
every single society has. I mean, we need a level of conformity to live, but I think our levels of conformity right now are is toxic. It's kind of toxic. It's unhealthy, if we can say that. We're like you were talking about the attachment theory. It's we are sacrificing ourselves to be accepted and loved. And whenever
mhm,
we sacrifice authenticity for acceptance, we ultimately betray ourselves. And I think that was Brene Brown that said something like that. And when we continuously betray ourselves, we get farther and farther and farther from who we really are and what we really came here to do. And we get so off of that path that we um, feel like we were meant to be
mhm. And it can be so hard, like, for people who, you know, have like beliefs are really strong, like, and operating within the society which is set up, like you look at any kind of like employment listing or whatever, and there's like a set amount of like what jobs exist. But if you want to be like a dream interpreter or a hypnotist, for example, like it's not listed there. So in a sense, like it's not accepted because it's not available in that sense. And so in many ways we have to conform because otherwise we can't survive, we can't pay rent. But I would just encourage people just to start with little steps, like doing small things, that brings you that sense of pleasure and joy that you used to have when you were young, or just things that make you feel free, and start small because that again enables that energy to flow. Um, but yeah, it is certainly it's a scary thing because you don't want to like lose income or start from complete scratch in developing like a certain um, new career that feels more aligned. But like it's the little things, that's Saturn energy. It's like the little steps, it's like that little energy investment in yourself, in cultivating that relationship, in um, building that new future, in using your imagination. That's a free thing. Using that imagination to build that reality in your mind. And then, like you said, those little action steps that you get from those visions, they're so easy to do when you're in flow and when you're sort of working with your natural rhythm. Like, even if it is one tiny thing a week that you do over the course of a year, that builds up. That's like your compound interest for those little investments. And that's like where Saturn will reward you because you're putting in that energy spent. And then over time, you find that your attachment to those old paradigms where you had to conform, it just sort of like crumbles away because it's no longer necessary. You're kind of vibing in a completely different domain. So yeah, it takes time, and it's no small thing. And sometimes it can be, yeah, there's definitely fear involved with that because it's like, well, what will the people who support me now think of this complete shift if they're not like in a space where they're making those kinds of changes for themselves? It's genuine fear exists there. So it just be like gentle with yourself, I would say. And um yeah, start with the little steps.
So, lastly, as we move on from this topic, I just wanted to talk quickly about, do you have any like tips or advice for people who want to be more attuned or just allow themselves to even receive and be in their authentic frequency and receive? Because um, as we talk about energy as currency, right? We still have all of this subconscious programming that we need to undo around money and what's possible. Um, so how do we attune to like allowing ourselves to receive? And I know you talk a lot about the second and the eighth house axis, which is something that we're going to talk about later on in the week when we do our Instagram live. But just telling people, giving people a little bit of advice of how they can attune so that they can hold more money or hold more abundance or hold more authenticity in their field.
Mhm. Well, it might sound kind of divergent, but I would say being out in nature is like one thing that completely changed the game for me. Just in the sense of um, like the earth is always giving. And like when you're out in nature, it kind of shifts your frequency by just mere exposure. And being able to sort of see the abundance of like life form growing in stark atmospheres sort of thing, it kind of creates a metaphor in a sense of like what's possible. So in these environments you calibrate to your natural frequency because you're a natural being, you're organic, you're your biology, you're a life form. So that simple thing of just connection with nature will create a shift in your frequency. Um, Other things I would say in terms of holding uh, money or like deconditioning in a sense would be looking at um, inherited beliefs. So look at beliefs that you've taken on from your family or from your social groups or from society. Um, and really like getting a sense within yourself of whether that's true for you so that you can sort of start to release those automatic things, because it's like this silent program that runs in the mind. Is like, you might do a post or create a video, and then there might be that thing of like, and this has happened to me, say like with the ESP series, for example, is like, no one's going to watch this because like it's not valued in society. So it's like, okay, so I can hear myself saying that, okay, well, now I have proof that someone has at least watched it. And then these kind of like evidence-based feedback of contradicting those beliefs can be really powerful to diffuse them.
Mhm.
And also kind of like what we were talking about before of like building that energetic strata in your imagination too is something that just paves the way. Like everything begins in the imagination. So um, using like your visions for the future, or like what your ideal kind of life would be, like what is rich for you, and what is not what is success generally, but like what is success in your terms. Defining that first and foremost, because often we don't really, that's a hard question to ask. And I only really asked myself that this year, is like, what does that actually look like for me? And that's like peace and flow and just like money in, money out kind of thing. So it's like creating these ideas, um, yeah, like what is actually true for you, and like not like how much money do they say we need in the bank in certain investments. Okay, like maybe that is a good like idea to get a sense of like where you're at potentially, but like what would that feel legitimately better? Like imagine yourself having that much money in the bank. Would you still have that anxiety in your body about spending money? So like just getting a sense of, yeah, what the ideal is for you. And then again, like just doing those little steps where you maybe take like a one action or like a plan that by the end of the year, like you've kind of set up maybe an alternate source of income, or at least like opened a business email address, as simple as that kind of thing. Because,
Taking that
like,
small, consistent action that Saturn is going to reward.
exactly. Yeah. And yeah, so just little steps. And it's like compound interest, like you don't see anything in the first year, maybe, or in the first period. It's going to be different for everyone. You don't see anything, but there will be a tipping point where things really do shift. And that is because of that consistent energy, that those energetic spends that you're investing in yourself, there will be a payoff as long as it's aligned and true and reflective of like what is, yeah, your core.
Love that. So, just right before we move on to Saturn and Pisces and how it relates just to everything that we talked about, how does what we've talked about so far, how does it relate to money, and our abundance in general? So, whether it be our authentic frequency, Saturn, just before we move on and leave this subject a little bit behind, how does it fully root? How does Saturn truly connect and relate to our finances?
Well, the way I see it is that if you aren't in integrity, you will be caught up on it. You can see that in society now. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors about, the image that people project, those images of success, which aren't true, not
Mhm.
backed by integrity. So eventually it'll come out. My feeling is that if you are aligned, if you are speaking, you know, your truth, if you are acting in a way that is truthful, and if you feel that resonance with your spirit when you are speaking and acting, then you're in integrity. So you've integrated mind, body, and spirit. And when you're vibrating at that harmonic level, then you are a receptive vessel. But if you are striving for something that is out of alignment with you, you'll just get roadblock after roadblock. You'll get bills and fines. You'll sort of see this pattern that, like, the universe is sort of showing you're off track with how you're moving in the world. So it's kind of like monitoring the return on your energetic investment. Like you said at the start of the show, is like, okay, so I'm putting in all this energy into an avenue. But just keep in mind too that, like, things take time with Saturn. So it's like they're not always going to be a instant, reward for your work. But it's like, how does your body feel in that work that you're doing? Does it enliven you? Does it give you a sense of richness? And money is just a byproduct of that alignment, essentially. So um, it's more about, like, if you listen to, like, law of attraction kind of thing, it's like, go for the essence and not the form. So it's like the essence of, like, if you're striving to earn a certain amount of money to be on a holiday so you can relax, is like, okay, can you relax now and then create that flow, that money will come to you, and then you'll be on a holiday. That kind of thing is like working with the energetics of money as opposed to, like, the dollar value, because that is always in flux. It's determined by something outside of you. But your energy is a currency that you can control. You determine the value. You determine whether you give a certain discount. You determine whether you take on jobs pro bono. You determine your rate. So, and that kind of will be seen by others. When you are in integrity, you're talking your truth, you're walking your walk. It creates a sense of, like, Sherise currency that people will see as valuable, and that is exactly, and it is, and that's what I feel is, like, the future of currency is, like, your energy. People, like, you can't lie about it. It'll come out eventually. People will see, like, in the results, people will see one way or another whether you are in integrity, and that's sort of, yeah, your Saturn influence.
I love that. I think it's so powerful what you just said, and so 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 true. Like being in integrity and understanding like why you're doing what you're doing, and just, is it resonating? Is it coming from your soul? Is it coming from your spirit? Are you allowing yourself to express yourself authentically? Is so 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 true. Like you said, essentially talking the talk but walking the walk, because there's a lot of people talking the talk but sometimes you don't walk the walk. And Thursday, you will meet Umi, and Umi Genevieve, she did a video on healers, and she was saying, if you are this divine vessel and you are channeling and you're helping and you are a leader to others, that you truly need to be in integrity, and your vessel does need to be that clear. And when you are giving advice, you can't be giving advice that you yourself don't truly follow, because you will see the blockages and you will see the effects right away. When you are giving advice and you're not in integrity, you're gonna see that karma come right back around really, really quickly, and like knock you off your ass. Because when we are these healers and teachers and we're holding space for people, it's really, really, really important for us to be in integrity. I mean, we're still human, but as much as being in integrity as much as possible.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, let's just dive into the last part of our video, which is Saturn in Pisces and how it relates to everything that we just talked about. Saturn is one of the slower moving planets, and as it completes its cycle in the zodiac, it's finally in the 12th sign. In a year and a half or so, it's going to go into Aries and start a whole brand new cycle. So, what do you feel like Saturn in Pisces is here to teach us? How should we tune into the frequency of Saturn in Pisces for us to even be aligned and really on the wavelength, we'll say? And then I'll ask you to go into a little bit about the differences that you saw in Saturn in Aquarius versus Saturn in Pisces, and what you think Saturn in Pisces is preparing us for with Saturn in Aries. But that's like 3 questions, so don't worry. I'm going to remind you. But the first thing is just Saturn in Pisces, what do you feel like Saturn in Pisces is teaching us, and how can we attune to that frequency of Saturn in Pisces?
Well, so I think we've covered a bit of that so far today in the sense of like taking our subtle senses seriously. Saturn wants us to use like the whole capacity of our experience to refine our processes, essentially. Um, there's a whole realm of Pisces energy that gets overlooked and um, discounted, like dreams, imagination, rest, surrender. These kinds of like Pisces energies that aren't typically, like, it's definitely changing, aren't typically, um, like
Accepted.
favored in a
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
So my feeling is that here we're being taught to allow for the spiritual nature to come to the fore, to allow this unseen dimension of our reality to come to the fore. And I think that is happening. Like, I honestly see it, maybe because I'm attuned to that kind of thing. I'm just laughing at Laura's comment. I attract baby
I'm
animals when
just
I'm menstruating.
realizing, I'm so sorry. I was just realizing there's a whole ass conversation in the comments, and I was just not aware. I was just totally tuned in. I'm like, what are we even talking about? But yeah, continue. I'm just putting these up.
I
Hey,
love that. Um, so yeah, it's like take your dreams seriously. Like I would for sure during Saturn in Pisces dream journal and look at it over time. Um, really look at the process and really like take note of key themes that keep coming up for you because they're going to be answers to the blockages that you find that you're facing again and again in life when we come into the end of the cycle. Like he's encouraging us to reset in that sense. He's encouraging us to um, release all this old programming, all this old structure, this whole like with Saturn being like reality is like release the concept of reality as you know it, essentially, because like things are fully shifting. Like even just this conversation about ESPs, like that will be mainstream in a certain amount of years' time where kids are like going into schools or whatever. It might not even be called that anymore, and these like superpower schools that you mentioned before, they'll exist because it's just going to be so obvious and so in our face that it's undeniable. And it's probably even like the case in a lot of senses now, depending on how you see things. So yeah, I feel like this is the prep work over the next period of time, but it's a process again. So it's like, like little steps and little awarenesses and little downloads. And yeah, like we're getting the answers from the unseen, I would say. And that's going to be building the new reality that we're all collectively going into.
so, how do you see Saturn in Pisces currently preparing us for basically this new millennium that we're going into, with Saturn entering Aries and Neptune going in there, and just all of this whole brand new energy?
That
Because
to
it's
me just,
the end of the cycle, right? With it being in Pisces.
yeah. Well, I'm excited for that. That talks to me about like the power of the human body, I would say, like with Saturn in Aries and Jupiter in Aries, like that to me is like the power that like the multidimensional nature of our human body right now. Maybe it's like flesh and bones, like that's the consideration. Some people might feel like it's a drag, but my view of it is I have a moon in the first house in Aquarius, so maybe like I'm like way in the future on this, but my sense of it is like um, our ability to communicate telepathically via our vibration, like that's all first house energy. Like that's the prep work here is like Saturn in Pisces is taking away like this old idea of like needing power outside of ourselves to heal ourselves, a power outside of ourselves to determine like our progress, or like the feedback of others, like in like our natural expression kind of thing. But I feel like we're moving into a time where our resonance is like it's going to speak for itself essentially. And I really believe like that our cells are holographic in nature, like they hold imprints of our future and our past. And when we sort of work with all of our essence, all of our senses, we will discover like healing capabilities. We'll be able to discover um, how touch can actually affect a person because it's like pure intent transmitted, this kind of stuff.
Mm.
Um, that's kind of where I think we're going. Like, not like, yeah, just like our mind as our field, essentially. Our whole, like, beyond the body, even our aura is like that whole part around us. It informs the room when we walk into it. People can sense that. It's
Mhm.
not conscious now, but it will be conscious soon. That's my belief. That's where I think we're
I
going.
can see that definitely with Neptune going into Aries. I can definitely see that. That would be
Mm,
cool if we can. I feel like you said we already kind of like telepathically communicate with our energy, anyways, because some people can just literally, like you said, like you walk in the room and you already feel the vibes. Like you already
mm,
know. So we'll just communicate through vibes. Like we no longer need to say anything. And it's crazy that you told me that you're an Aquarius moon because I didn't know that before. But I feel like all Aquariuses or Aquarius placements came from a past. How can we even say this? Like you came from a place, like not on this planet. You came from a place where you guys communicated telepathically. I know
oh,
this for a fact, okay? Every single Aquarius moon or Aquarius placement that I come upon like prefers to just like not talk or just
oh,
feels like you should know. Like,
yeah,
and it's like
that's so
you
true.
guys definitely came from a past like planet or a past wherever where you guys just talked telepathically and didn't have to open your mouth. Like you just felt the vibes.
Mm. Yeah, I think, I was actually thinking that coming into this is like, I have so much to say, I wish and it's so hard for me to put it in, like, linear sentence form because I just wanna, like, be like this and just, like, have you know? Like in that movie, The Arrival, where they, like, talk in a circle and then it's just, like, communicated like that.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm definitely a silent person because I just feel like I like, it's just so hard to make linear the conversation.
But I
So
think that
I
you still do such a good job of doing it. Like I said, it's not easy talking about these things or even describing or finding the language when it never really when it's not mainstream or it's not really existed. So I think you still do a really good
mm,
job of it. And I really want to encourage you to continue this line of work because like even Umi saying like we have a lot of like these sensory sensitive kids now. They're gonna
mhm,
need this work to help
yeah,
them understand their senses because as we continue to ascend and evolve, we are being more aware of these sensitive parts of ourselves and these sensory perceptions where we can just tune into different frequencies. Where just a
mm,
couple generations back, that would have been seen as like you would have went to probably like the mental hospital for that or like
mhm,
even a woman or just be called a witch. So our kids
mhm,
are going to be truly, I believe, with that energy, and we need this type of work for them to be able to understand themselves.
mhm,
Anything else you want to say about Saturn and Pisces? I know I feel like Saturn and Pisces as well will help us, like you said, clear this energy that we've been holding on to for generations and generations, or even just cycles and cycles. Like I feel like this can be an ending point, like you said, to kind of like clear what is truly no longer working and bring
mhm,
something continue to the new millennium. But anything else you want to say about Saturn in Pisces and yeah, how it relates to our frequency even now?
Yeah, I think just realizing the time of the transit is important. Like, this isn't just like a daily or monthly process. Like, this is a long-term transit. Saturn works in a long span of time. So, just feel like it's really important that people recognize when working with Saturn energy, Saturn in Pisces energy is like there is no time here. Where we're working in a completely different dimension of clearing, of integration actually with Saturn. So I would just say really be gentle with yourself, very aware as well of the fact that a lot of energy that you are contending with isn't necessarily yours. So just just being mindful of when you are feeling overwhelmed by the changes in the world around you to have those places that you can go where you can just be in your own energy and be in your own field and just give yourself that time to decompress and just let it flow however it works for you. Like maybe it's movement, maybe it's dance, maybe it's swimming, maybe it's just sitting in music and allowing like that frequency to you know neutralize the intensity
Help
of whatever it is that you're picking up.
to help regulate.
um, yeah, exactly. So and just realizing that it's a process that like we've got however long left of the Saturn in Pisces transit, and even when it turns into Aries, there's going to be that shift of like integrating the new reality, and um, it's never like a linear dot change with astrology. It's like energy is fluid, so
Mhm.
yeah, it's just realizing that we are in a process of change. Time is changing, the way that we perceive time, and there will be a lot of things that come up for people from their past too that can be triggering too. So having resources in place, whether that be counseling or whether that be coaching, just anyone that you can kind of communicate like what really is coming up for you can be helpful, even if it even if that's not accessible. Writing out things so that you're actually getting the energy out of yourself, out of your body, can be super cathartic in this time. um, and being in nature again is a wonderful thing to do just for that reconnection with. It's just so healing just to like be in a natural environment to connect back, because we're so information like overloaded um, that sense of calm that nature can provide, whatever it is for you, whatever feels best for you,
Mhm.
um, would be really helpful too. And any kind of creative expression that just allows energy to flow when you're feeling overwhelmed by everything that's happening around you, and when your sensitivities are on overload, rest. If it means like calling in sick, take the day. Like look after yourself, because those little investments will pay off for you. Um, and that's what Saturn is teaching us with this transit.
We are learning to manage our time and our energy better, most definitely. I
Hmm.
feel that. Before you go, Nicole, I feel like I'm saying that before you go, like before, because I'm just asking other things. Can you just give us a little advice for those of us going through our Saturn return in Pisces? Just anything, any type of advice that you would have for us, like for me, my 12th house, just to take it all home for us.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Well, let's see. I would really something that I'm learning is that our subconscious mind is incredibly powerful in the sense that we can really tune in and work with it, to allow ourselves to bring up what it is that we need to work with any given day. So Saturn in the 12th house, I have that placement too, is like, how do I put this? You can plant seeds with, I don't know how to explain this. Planting seeds is like a really small thing. And again, it comes back to that consistency is like, do whatever your like dominant intake capacity is. So for you, Sherise, it's like you're a visual imagine person. So it's like vision boards, creating like scenes and essences in your mind where you can exist. And just again, like building that energetic strata in your mind. Saturn wants you to like it wants you to succeed. It wants you to reach those goals. You wouldn't have the vision otherwise. And so just trust what you perceive and trust the process and trust your sense of timing. I feel like I'm just saying the same thing again and again, but like I don't know, that's kind of what I feel is like you have it can feel harsh at times because what you see in your mind is like very different to what you see in reality. But trust that like you have those visions because you're here to help build that new reality. So I would just say like trust your process and like really develop that sense of like body awareness of like that you are on the right path and you'll get that feedback because of the work that you do. So I that's just kind of what I would say about that. It can feel harsh and it can feel like restrictive and that you maybe are really like needing to work a lot to get to where you want to be, but there's such value in the process. And don't be too like outcome focused because it's that process that is refining you and it's invisible. It's like stuff that you can't see the immediate result about, but it's happening.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that. I
Yes,
definitely do feel,
Lotus.
yes, Lotus, Saturn definitely wants us to reprogram our subconscious. I do believe that because, like I said, we are literally entering a new world and we can't take all of this old ways of thinking um, there because I truly believe time is like almost speeding up. We're vibrating higher, we're vibrating faster, and we're manifesting faster too.
Mm,
And that's why I think the clearing is so important because we're manifesting faster. So if we're still having all of these negative things in there, we are going to take this with us into whatever we're creating. So I think it's so important this huge clearing that we're having right now with Saturn and Pisces.
mhm.
Anything that you want to leave the people with when it comes to Saturn? What do you wish people knew when it comes to Saturn and the whole narrative we have around Saturn being the bad guy? Like, what is a message that you would want to leave about Saturn and like helping people understand what Saturn is truly there for and how it can help them?
Well, I think Saturn is very realistic, you know, like he knows that even if you have these grand visions of a beautiful future where everybody is vibrating super harmonically, um, you know, there's always going to be the spectrum of experience. Um, we wouldn't be here if that weren't the case, I don't think. But we're building towards something that is more harmonic. We're seeing the errors of our ways. So I think one thing would be like when I'm saying stuff like walk and talk in integrity and align your spirit with like what you do in the world, how you spend your energy is like if you have like to work at a job that doesn't exactly align with you entirely, but it's helping you build a future for yourself. I'm not saying like quit your job kind of thing. Like Saturn is a realist, so he knows that you have to like exist in this reality. Um, so I guess the invitation though is that in these environments, in these encounters that we have in the world, whatever discord and energies we come across, is like there's a lesson in it. It's teaching us, like there are people in the world that will come into discord with. There are really sad truths about this world that we will face, and that is just the reality as it stands, and we can't deny this. But what we can do is try to make our imprint, our footstep, one that is harmonic, so that when we as a collective all take on this personal responsibility to emit a vibration that is in more harmony, and it's never going to be perfect, and we're always going to make mistakes, and we're going to be triggered by our programming. We're going to be uh, acting out scenarios that we haven't healed yet. It's inevitable. But when we are conscious about it, and when we are learning, when we hit a brick wall, or when we have a difficult encounter, an argument, whatever, it's like not beating ourselves up about it, but integrating the lesson and taking that to make better choices in the future. And that is how we, you know, um, those markers that Saturn's putting out in our path is how we are being shown in the physical world how to reprogram our subconscious, because it's being shown to us in reality. So it's not to say that we're just being challenged to get stronger or whatever. In a sense, that's true, but it's like reality is showing us where the energy isn't aligned. It's showing us where we need to make those little refinements, and it can be hard to change those behaviors. But over time, you'll see that you're not in the same place as you were last year. You're not in the same place as you were 5 years ago. And that passage of time is where it changes. It happens in the off peak, it happens in the midnight hours. In a sense, it happens when you're not conscious, it happens when you rest, it happens when you integrate. So like developing that relationship with some of the more difficult experiences, where can we grow from this? What is it showing me? What is it inside of me that hasn't been healed? Like these are the things that that help us, and it enables us to refine those processes and emit that more healthy, more aligned vibration that brings a sense of peace. And change, it happens. We are growing every day. It is occurring. So just making note of those little wins as well, and giving yourself that space to allow the passage of time to demonstrate to you that it's all underway. We're all in. It's all in progress, in process.
I love that. I definitely feel like you have taught us a lot about using our energy and spending our energy wisely and our energetic currency wisely. And just to close up, I love what you said about each of us taking our personal responsibility to and our personal energetic footprint. And I think that is the most important. Can you be you? Can you be your purpose? Can you have your authentic frequency no matter where you go? And I think like that's important, whether or not you're at work, whether or not this or that. If we all take it upon ourselves to be responsible for our own energy, we're going to create these ripple effects where my positive energy interacts with your energetic field, and then that boosts your energetic field, and then you go on to boost someone else's energetic field. And even just the conversation we're having today, and people receiving information like this, and it changing something within them and their energetic field. It's just all of these little ripple effects. We don't know how far it can go. And I think that is also something that Saturn teaches us, is like there's nothing too small. There's no change
Mhm.
too small. Like the smallest change, the smallest ripple of a butterfly can literally create a tsunami. So it's so important to do all of those small things and to notice the small progress and to take that small, tiny action because you never know where the ripple effect will lead. So
Perfectly said.
I'm just reformulating what you said. But I just want to say, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on today and discussing with us how we can energetically spend our energy wisely and our currency wisely and be able to attract the things that we want to and be on the right path and tune into our authentic frequency. I can talk to you about so much more things. I know you're doing hypnotherapy, you're studying, you're getting licensed, and there's just so much other things that we can talk about, like periods and everything. But we have to end the conversation. But let people know where they can find you, any current offerings you have, or like what's to come for you. Um, and I will also let you guys know what we're going to be discussing on Thursday as well. But Nicole, just let people know where to find you, anything about your offerings or anything like that.
Yeah, so predominantly YouTube is where I keep most of my material, but also on, and that's Outer Inner Space. And my website is outerinner.space. So you'll find the periods, brainwaves, and astrology there, some notes on ESP, and some articles that might be useful. Um, yeah, that's the crux of it. Thank you, Sherise, for having me here. I really appreciate the invitation and every kind word that you've said, and just your energy in general is just, I love what you do. And I think that, yes, you're definitely backed by integrity. It's very obvious to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I also want to let everyone know, so that Nicole is going to offer a discount for anyone who signs up through the link. We're gonna in the replay. We're gonna probably put the link in the bio with the percentage. I do not want to botch the percentage, but I think it's 10% off. To anyone who wants to check out her work or purchase some of her writings or recordings. They're highly insightful. They work. They like literally, you guys have heard my experience with them. Just make sure to use code FIERCE for your 10% off. Thank you so much, Nicole, for that generous offer. And this Thursday, Nicole is going to be going live with me and Umi on Success with the Stars. So we'll be discussing more about calibrating to our authentic frequency. We're going to also be talking about synthesizing our second and eighth house axis. Literally, like we were talking about earlier, like becoming valuable, because becoming valuable is also another important factor when it comes to attracting money and getting our riches and our success is cultivating that value within ourselves where people want to now either invest in us or just even like get our value, like pay us for whatever it is that we're offering, for what we're
Mm.
offering. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. And of course, we're going to delve more into ESP, body connections, and any questions that you guys may have. So thank you so much, Nicole, for coming in. I highly recommend every single one of you guys to go check out her ESP series or her chart ruler series right now on YouTube. I guarantee you that you guys will learn something about your energy that you didn't know like before, or you knew intuitively, but you couldn't articulate it. She's going to give you the language to articulate it. I feel like it's really well done. You give amazing examples, and your videos have really helped me clarify my powers, my gifts, and just give words to them. So thank you so much, Nicole, for gracing us with your presence today. I cannot wait to see what you have coming next, how you integrate hypnotherapy with everything you're doing and astrology. And yeah, just keep doing this work. It's important.
Thank you, Sherise. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yes, thank you for everyone who's watching. So bye. See you next time.